Welcome everyone to Sunday Sentiments.
Of course, this is a hate crime.
And if she's found guilty, then she has to face the consequences.
They normally end up killing some particular kinds of people.
It's a violation of human rights.
That's a very traumatic event.
So I just wanted to ask the panel about their own opinions on this topic.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sunday Sentiments. Sunday Sentiments is a segment on our YouTube channel where a panel comes together and discusses current events and hot topics from all over the world. Please be aware that the views that we share on this panel are our own. They do not reflect the views of Four Wings. These are everybody's personal opinions. So to introduce the first topic, it is quite heavy on our hearts, like it's happening currently. I'm assuming all of you have heard about the Russian invasion of Ukraine currently that is happening. Just obviously very tragic, but to those people who don't really know how this whole thing is happening, I still wanted to give like a very brief recap of a very like brief timeline of what exactly is happening. So this all like stems back from 1991 when Ukraine first got their independence and they had to hand over their nuclear weapons to Russia in an agreement called the Budapest Memorandum. As I said, they had to hand over every single one of their nuclear weapons. So they were then after that a non-nuclear power. If we jump all the way over to 2008, that's when they were being considered to be invited to join NATO. But because of the opposition like that Russia was giving to this decision, they didn't want Ukraine to join at all. They didn't end up getting this position in NATO. Specifically, it was said that at one point, allegedly, Putin told then President George W. Bush that Ukraine, quote, is not even a real nation state. And because of that, they weren't given the required like invitation to join NATO. Now, if we jump all the way to this year, February 21st, 2022, following the breakdown of relations with NATO and the West in late February, Putin recognized Ukraine territory, some territories in Ukraine as independent states and sent troops in to keep the peace. 3 days later is when he started the invasion on Ukraine, specifically in the eastern Ukrainian territory of Donbas. The president of Ukraine declared martial law and officially broke diplomatic ties with Russia. And Putin's actions were then condemned all over the world, and people are still putting out all kinds of videos and their own statements of what exactly is happening in the country and all the atrocities that are being committed against Ukrainians. So I just wanted to hear if anybody had any thoughts on this at all, since this is a discussionary panel. Oh, sure.
For me, this was quite shocking, although not shocking, also knowing how Putin is. To me, he's a power-hungry man. And it was totally an unprovoked invasion, totally senseless war. It just doesn't make any sense. And I would believe what others are saying, that it's because he doesn't want NATO to expand its territory towards the east. So he wants to control Ukraine, and he wants to annex Ukraine to make it part of the Russia, to bring back the former Russian countries to the former Soviet countries back together. I believe that.
Yeah, I've definitely heard a lot of theories from people as well online who've been saying that the reason that he is invading Ukraine itself is because they're being once again considered to be part of the NATO nations. And because of that, that's like Ukraine is apparently one of the only country that's between Russia and like 3 other NATO countries. So he wants to keep that barrier there. And if he can't keep it, he's going to take over it because he doesn't. It's Putin. We've known for a while it has to be his way in general. Antonella?
Thanks. It's very complicated issue because I consider myself ignorant in this geopolitical situation. I think every one of us, but in general, if we are not at the power, it's very complicated to have a complete understanding of the situation. So what I can do, what everyone can do, is at least following the TV news, the updated internet. The idea that I have is, as a professional, I try, in my professional life, I've been taught that not to judge. So by looking at this situation, I guess that neither of Biden or Putin, neither of US and Russia are saint, neither of them, because as you said, thank you also, Shakira, for having shared the historical background, because it's a very complicated issue. In fact, it's not something that is happening only today, just also 30 years ago. What I know is that there was also after the end of the Cold War, a bilateral agreement between the United States of America and Russia about a nuclear weapon. The United States were the first to withdraw from this agreement. It was an unilateral decision, so one-sided decision, sorry. But so this is something bad that US did. And also on the other hand, Russia has continued and has been continuing to develop nuclear technologies. What I know is that Russian technology, they have developed a weapon called Saturn II. Imagine also from the name Saturn II. So it's a nuclear weapon that can go so fast, in 2 minutes, can reach Moscow, Paris, Moscow, Rome. So this nuclear weapon can go 6 times faster than the light speed. So I think that we all have to keep our fingers crossed that no one use nuclears, no one side, neither the other side, because otherwise we would all go to heaven in just 1 second. So it's very complicated, and but what I'm sad for Ukrainians, because as in every war, the worst part are not the 2 armies that are fighting, the soldiers, but the worst price is paid by the people that live in the country where the battle has been fought. In this case, Ukrainians that are going to Poland, and yeah, it's very sad for Ukraine. I'm sad for that.
Thank you, Antonella. You are very correct. It's usually like people will focus on the political like side of things and stuff like that when it comes to these kinds of wars, but it is the civilians themselves that are going to be suffering the most. Like I don't know if anybody has seen them, but most of us have probably seen the videos of them trying to escape, like, because they have to flee. They don't have anywhere else to go. They can't just hide in a bunker and just hope that it's okay, because there's a nuclear threat, because it's a huge country with a lot of nuclear weapons that are there trying to like take over the entire country. Keshi?
Yeah, like you and Antonella said, they're always the civilians who are actually the ones suffering, and this is the Ukrainians. So far as it is, 210 plus people are dead, 1,100 plus are injured, 156,000 Ukrainians have crossed over to Poland, According to UNHCR, 400,000 people have fled from Ukraine. So this is a humanitarian crisis. This is a refugee crisis, and it's going to affect all of us in Europe. And as it says right now, Putin has put his nuclear forces on high alert. Those nuclear forces that Antonella just mentioned. So these are serious situation. And actually, yeah, I'm not even looking at it like a US-Russian thing, because for me, this is a matter of sovereignty, that the Ukrainians have a right to join whichever bodies they want, and that, yeah, there's a country acting authoritarian and others kind of escalating this situation, some governments escalating this situation for their advantage, and you know which government that is. So let's think of the people themselves, those ones who are struggling at the border. There are even stories of people who have been prevented from getting into transportation from Ukraine to Poland, because these are allegations that Africans have been stopped at the border and they are taking specific people first. So let's look closer at this situation and yeah, hope that this thing doesn't escalate to the whole of Europe, and then ask ourselves, when we have such a crisis, what really should matter? Is it the human cost of this, or is it the political cost, or what? This is something we should ask ourselves, and governments should ask themselves.
I actually have to say that me and Jamila have actually had this discussion, I think with Shiko as well, like earlier, about how a lot of these countries that are taking in Ukrainians now, which is obviously great because these people are in immediate danger, a lot of them will still, like you were saying, they don't really focus on the people themselves. They focus on, how can I politically gain from this? Because they have done that, like when there's hugely publicized like fleeings of people, like what's called people fleeing from war-torn countries and stuff like that. If it's very big in the media, some countries will be like, we're just going to open our borders to everyone, while they still have people in their own countries that have been living there for years waiting for citizenship. But they accept the people that are going to get the most media attention, positive media attention for that country. A lot of these countries have also been putting out their own like sanctions and rules against Russia to, I don't know, try to stop them. If they can't stop them politically or with, you know, empathy and sympathy, they will do it with the economy, which is why I think, I'm not sure about America yet, but I at least know that Boris Johnson has been putting sanctions up for what can be brought into Russia from, I don't know, or brought from Russia in here and stuff like that. They have been putting sanctions. Denmark as well have banned Russian airplanes from their airspace. And I'm pretty sure America has also put sanctions on Russia, stuff like that, because they think that stopping them economically will most likely, you know, hinder how much damage they can do if they don't have that much money going for them. But it's still hard. You can't really do a lot in these kinds of situations unless they directly go to war, which will cost a lot of lives. Shika?
Yeah, I was thinking about how much really can economic sanctions, how really can you harm Russia with economic sanctions? They seem to have quite a lot of money and quite a lot of people there that have tons of money, and they still have a connection with China, if I'm not wrong. So like my other panelists have said before, the only people who end up suffering even with this kind of sanctions are the people themselves, because those people at the top who want this war, they'll be fine. You know, they're covered, they've got money, they've got resources, they've got bunkers to hide in. So it's going to be the Russian people suffering. And I had an argument where it was being argued that if these sanctions are put and the Russian people start suffering, then they themselves might rise up against Putin and want to get him out. Maybe, you know, but how long will that take and how many will die before this happens. I don't know what the solution to this is, you know. If it's not economic sanctions, then what? It's just so scary because there's that nuclear threat or that threat of World War III. And for me, I feel, you know, you don't think about being a refugee or being close to these kind of things until they're happening very close to you. Then it becomes very, very real. Because we do see refugees, we see people coming, but you don't really, you might empathize, but you don't really think about it until you realize, wow, this thing could escalate and end up at our doorstep, especially for us who are in Europe. We're not very far from Ukraine and Russia. So anything could happen, and next thing we are fleeing and we're having to go and find a place of safety. And it's as Keshi said, that's why we should think empathetically and think what should matter at this time. Yeah, it should be the human. And I hope these stories we're hearing that certain people are not being allowed to cross because ethnic Ukrainians are being put first to flee. I hope those stories are not true, because at this time, it really should be about being a human, and any human that can live, especially people with children, no matter what their color, they should be allowed to leave the country and go to a safe place.
I agree, Shiko. And what I wanted to say is that we all are sympathizing with the Ukrainians, but if this is actually happening, then it would be very sad that they expect the whole world to sympathize with them, but they are also being, as allegations say, being racist towards people who are not of their ethnicity, and them not being allowed to leave the country so that they are stranded. Then this would make it very difficult for many people to empathize, because a human life is a human life at the end of the day.
Yes, thank you.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead, Vera.
Yeah, I saw today one journalist reporting about, you know, he was saying in a partially civilized country, a partially European country, that you were never expect something like this happening, and which there were many complaints about, like, so it means that Afghanistan and Syria is because it's Middle East, so is it normal that that happens, and in the Ukraine, you know, you would never expect. And then also about the refugee things, you know, when it is a refugee from Afghanistan or Syria, while people are like, no, we don't want refugees in our country, and now in the, you know, sympathizing with just because of the color, maybe, and then maybe there are other people living there in the Ukraine from all over the world living there, but they want just a safe place. And still, if there is this kind of discrimination and then still racism in a moment of war, let's say, because they are being bombed and they are really not in a safe situation, and still they are talking about this kind of, you know, yeah, in the Middle East you would expect, and then there, no, everywhere can happen, as we see, you know, everywhere is a possible place right now. And still, if people are still discriminating in their mind because of the color, because of the ethnic or cultural differences, the being refugee, you know, is just being safe, being in a safe place no matter where, you know, because people sometimes now is saying like, now did you understand the situation of Syria, Afghanistan, after all these things, you know, now people can realize, okay, it can happen to anywhere, it can happen to my country, only when it happens somewhere, as the journalist was saying, like partially civilized and partially blah blah, so it can happen anywhere. Is in Afghanistan or Syria, it wasn't because they are in the Middle East. No, it's just because of the, you know, advantage of many countries. They use this power. So I agree with you, you know, with Shiko, what she was saying, like, you know, because of the colors, maybe some people are, I hope these are all fake, because it's not the time of this kind of discussion. It's important, just the life of people here. This I wanted to say.
Yes, thank you, Beryl. You're actually making a lot of points as well. But the way that you're saying that this journalist said that it would happen in partially civilized or whatever it is, it's just a stupid statement. But I don't think anybody can really say that, especially Americans, because they like to say a lot about the Middle East, as if they weren't the ones who destabilized the countries there in the first place and caused all of this. Because a lot of these countries were fine, they were flourishing before, and then the Americans had to be like, we just want to get involved because the American way, get involved in everything. And then they jump in, ruin a country, and then leave them in shambles, and then wonder on the news, why is the Middle East have so many issues? Because you left them in peril.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, Shakira, actually, I've just remembered a point I wanted to say when Antonella said, the US, even UK, that they're not really saints. And it's true. And I find it very hypocritical, especially of the US and the UK, to jump in and look down on Russia like they're on a higher moral ground, saying they're attacking an innocent nation. Well, they went and did that in Iraq with their fake war on terror and their fake narrative about Iraq having weapons of mass destruction, that we found out later that there were no weapons of mass destruction. They just wanted to go and attack Iraq for whatever reason. I don't even know what the reason was. And they turned this country upside down based on a false narrative. Those people were innocent and they had done nothing to either country. So it is quite funny to see, all this looking down and condemning and whatever, when you've done that in the Middle East a lot of times.
And then acting like saviors.
Exactly. I also just wanted to make a point about that. They're calling this World War III, but we need to remember the other wars. There's been 2 world wars. Where did they take place? The Middle East? I don't think so. It's been the more recent years, since like the 80s and up, where the Middle East has been the center of where they say, oh, this is where all the war-torn countries are, as if they didn't almost blow up the entire world, like during the Second World War, and then the First World War, where they were fighting as well because one guy got assassinated and stuff like that. I don't think any countries, especially European or like American or like UK or anywhere in Europe, really can judge anybody else in the world, because they'll look at Africa and they'll be like, oh, little poor people, like they didn't economically mess them up. Same with the Middle East. And you were saying before, you don't know why they did it. I'm always saying all of these wars, all of it is just for profit. They don't care about human lives. They just know that they can make money a certain way. But the way that Beryl, I think, said that there isn't really safety, like you can be in danger anywhere in the world. There can be wars anywhere. You might not get lucky one time. That actually reminded me of a video that we're going to show in a second, of this British man who said that he basically had to leave his brother behind because he was in Ukraine at the time. He couldn't get his brother with him to flee the country. He had to save his 2 children. And he's like, there's a video of him like crying, having to explain that he had to make the best choice for him and his children. So Antonella, then Shira, and then the video.
Thank you very much. Actually, when Shiko was talking, I share every point. The last sentences that Shiko was saying reminded me that no one is a saint, as I said before, also because what is happening now, it's very complex. It's impossible to use a narrative that is enough to include every aspect of this. So because what is happening is also because the Russian dream of the empire actually never slept. The Soviet Union, the URSS, even if it's 2022, and even if we have Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Ukraine, but Russia, Putin, he dreamed of the Russian Empire. And also Putin actually shouldn't even be at power because his mandate is too long. In fact, some scholars have described the Russian political situation as there is an Italian word, democratura. It's mixture between democracy and a dictatorship. So it's like it looks like it's a democracy on the paper. They are a democratic country, but as a matter of fact, the time of the mandate of Putin is too long. But it's as well true that, as also you, Shakira, were saying before, and also Shiku, the fact that America started this war in Iraq, the Iraqi war, and it was very tragic. And unfortunately, it was not even the only war that the United States of America started. So all over the 5 continents, United States of America, they all have they put their nose into someone else's affairs. They want the resources. We hope, everyone hopes, I think, that in general, this issue doesn't escalate even further. It's already escalated, it's already went too far. But hopefully, for example, today I was with a friend of mine, and he was commenting, the Italian government, the price of the oil is too much. And I said, it's not the fault of the Italian government, it's because we also take the oil from Ukraine. And so it's complicated because also other European countries have the interest into Ukrainian resources like oil. It's very complicated.
Yes, thank you, Antonella. It's very clear that there's a lot of layers to this, because you can say that Russia is trying to get in because of their own benefits, and the countries that are trying to save Ukraine, or actually save them, probably also, not even probably, they most definitely have their own agenda as well. Like the US, why? They don't actually care about Ukrainians. They care about Russia and Putin not getting any more power. But just to add real quick before I give Shira let Shira speak, it actually reminded me of something else, because you were talking about how Putin has been president since the 90s or something like that. He's been running elections against people, but he always wins 99.999% of the votes all the time. Even though it's a democracy, he's winning every single time, even though people are afraid of him. But that actually reminded me of a different thing. It had to do with Ukraine as well, where they themselves actually had Russian interference in their elections in 2004, where there were 2 presidential, there was an election between, I cannot pronounce the names, so I will be using the first names, Victor, a Western-oriented candidate, and another Victor by another name, who was supported by Russia, which created a huge controversy at the time. The Western-oriented, candidate was mysteriously poisoned and died. And then that led to the Russian-supported man winning, but people held huge protests, and in the end got the entire thing debunked. So technically, even though the man passed away, he still won the election. But you can even see, even in smaller circumstances, they still want to be able to swoop in and take some kind of control over Ukraine. I feel like this was just where they got tired of waiting. Putin got tired of waiting, and he was like, let me just jump in. I have the opportunity to do it now. Shira?
Yeah, there's also, we can also look at it from Putin's viewpoint. I'm not saying he's justified in any way, but he claims that Ukrainians and Russians are one people. And when I was doing some reading, I realized there's a little bit of truth in it, because many Ukrainians are ethnic Russians, actually 1 in 6, and 1 in 3 Ukrainians speak Russian. So they have a lot of history together, and that's why he feels like he's entitled to go and invade the country. But also, like Antonella said, resources. The wars that are fought in the world are because of resources. That's why Americans meddle in the Middle East, because of the oil. So Russia is interested in the resources of Ukraine. Ukraine is known to have a lot of coal, iron, fertile land. So it's to the advantage to take it. And Also, Ukraine is like divided into two. There's Eastern Ukraine and Western Ukraine. Western Ukraine, obviously, more towards Europe, and Eastern Ukraine, like two states, are sympathetic to Russia. And there are a lot of Russians in that area. So there are rebels also in that area fighting the Ukrainian government, and the Russians are supporting them. So you can see it's a very complex issue. And then when it comes to this issue of preventing Africans or other people from leaving, how do they know that some of the Ukrainians leaving to go to Europe, to Britain or wherever are not actually ethnic Russians? It's just so racist and it doesn't make sense.
Yes, if I may, super quick, super quick. And I also don't trust Macron that suddenly he has become the hero of diplomacy. Well, I just think that he wants to solve this controversial issue because he wants Ukrainian resources. So I don't trust even France immediately. The role of diplomacy. Where were you when this Macron, I'm talking the imaginary Macron, where were you when this conflict started? Sorry.
Yes, thank you. Now that everybody has made that point, we'll show the video and then we have some points to make after, which actually pertains to Antonella's point that she just made.
Yeah, I also wanted to say that it can happen, like you say, anywhere, and we end up fleeing to the places where you feel these people should not come here. Because now I was thinking, if this war comes to Western Europe, spills over to Denmark, then I'm thinking, where can we flee? Oh, we have to run to Kenya or somewhere else. Imagine if now Kenyans started panicking and saying, we don't want people here, and so on. So it's good to think like that, that this thing, we may be safe in our little bubble today. Tomorrow, things could change, and then you're the one fleeing. How would you feel if those people you're fleeing, where you're fleeing, don't want you there? And we're not talking about people who fake to be refugees. We are talking about genuine people fleeing conflict and just want to have a peaceful life and to save their family.
It's just, you're still in shock, you know, still in shock.
What have you left behind, Stuart? It's all right. Honestly, you do not need to say sorry.
My brother's still there. 30 years of life.
Oh. But you've done the right thing, you know. You said if there is ever a risk to your children. How old are your kids, Stuart?
They're 12 and 14. I've got another daughter in America.
Yeah.
So that you're absolutely right. Thank you for getting me back on track. That was the main thing, you know. I'm so happy I got my kids out, but I'm not happy at all.
No, of course not. Of course not. But you've done, in the most awful circumstances, you've done what you think is the right thing for your family, and everybody will make their own decisions, won't they? And that was yours.
The problem is, yeah, you think, right, but it's not even that. Even the people that want to leave, there's no fuel on the roads anymore. There's no food anywhere. You know, the border, I was ahead of most people, and I had a 9-hour wait. There'll be 24-hour waits just now. I'm absolutely sure of it. And it's overnight in the cold. You know, thankfully, anybody that's got small children are going straight to the front of the queue. But it still leaves a lot of cars on the road. And, you know, I've said to people in Kiev, do not leave the city unless you've actually got everything that you need to take wherever you want to go. Because don't assume you can buy anything like fuel, food, water on the road.
Yeah, that was pretty hard to watch. I don't really know what I can say in this kind of situation after watching that video, because I didn't see it till now.
It makes an impact because, of course, we have to think that this man represents thousands of people that have been living in the same situation, and also in other civil wars, or in other, also climate refugee in Bangladesh, like Rohingya. There are in every part of the world refugees of different reasons, in this case for war, that no one would like to live like this, his house, unless it's tourism, but this is not a type of trip that you do for pleasure. You are forced to change your life, so of course it's not easy, but I like what the journalist said. Of course, it's impossible to make this man happy because he's under shock, we could see. But I agree with the one point of the journalist, because she said that you did what you thought was the right thing for your family. And in fact, actually, I personally agree, because this was a good dad, thinking first of his children.
Yeah, thank you, Antonella. You're definitely right. I did like that she wasn't like how journalists usually are, like passive, how they usually have to deliver news, that she actually was sympathetic to this poor man who's had to make some very, very horrible decision, not horrible, but hard decision for his family and his own safety. And also the things that he was saying about everybody else has a 24-hour plus wait. He had like children, and he was like gotten closer to the front of the line. I'm assuming because of that, even though they're not small, he still has children. But all the other people who don't have, like the people in the back of the queue who have been there for days on end, yeah, it's just hurtful to see that in this kind of situation there isn't really a lot that people can do. But this this actually made me think of what's it called, that I've been seeing a lot of these like people talking about this kind of stuff on social media and expressing their own opinions on it. I've seen videos from Ukrainians themselves that have been posting videos of flares falling down from the sky and like explosions that they can see from their own houses. And like, I feel like in this day and age, there's no way that you can't have sympathy for people in general, and especially in these kinds of just situations, because you see one for watching. Please, if you like our videos, please feel free to watch any of our other ones that we have upcoming about issues like this and other subjects that are similar to it. Yeah, that is all for today. See you next time in the next video.
And like and subscribe, share our channel. Thank you.